what extent are you optimistic that we have a code of conduct at the end of this year?
And let's have the two other questions over there at that table as well, and then we'll come back and do quick responses. And I see, Jay, you had a question as well, so let's do that.
For Singapore, there's a quick question. Based on my engagement with ASEAN intelligence and military officials in 2024, there are two trends. First, it seems the Chinese have been giving messages to some ASEAN countries that the time not to take side is coming to an end. ASEAN should have to take side soon. Second point, Chinese official that I spoke to informed me that we have to live with the rise of China, and China has to have a large military, and we have to live with them. So my question is this: do you think ASEAN and the TAC continue to remain relevant in the age of market supply? Thank you.
Thanks, President, we have a good look at our cities. So right now we are from the keynote speakers and these panels. I feel the idea of resolving the disputes between among ASEAN and the first. So I wonder whether it's a consensus already or just a few countries in the heavy countries.
I think we had a question from Jay, is that right? We could just take that one real quick, and then we'll come back, and we'll just do quick 30-second to 1-minute responses, and then we can close.
Thank you for very excellent speakers. My question is for the Malaysian and Indonesian speakers. We know for a fact that for almost 2 years already, the Philippine government has led transparency initiative in exposing Chinese aggressive actions in the West Philippine Sea. My question is for Indonesia and Malaysia. Will there be a possibility that both governments will also follow the same path that the Philippines is doing in exposing Chinese aggression? And if not, why? Thank you.
Great, so let's just go down the line with 4 topics. One is odds of the COC being concluded by next year. Second one on relevance amid might makes right. Consensus, the extent to which it exists. And then the fourth and last one, the potential for transparency initiatives that the Philippines has undertaken for other countries in the region. So let's go down the line, and Admiral Gaban, to start.
Thank you. Whether or not we should be optimistic about the DOC, my personal opinion, I think with the way it is going, maybe not. But we have hope if we are to take practical steps in coming up with protocols, at least amongst Coast Guards, just to prevent missteps that can lead to more complications at sea. And we have several platforms through which we can develop a pseudo code or a mini code amongst us. And efforts are underway. Through the ASEAN Coast Guard Forum, we are trying to formulate the common protocol on engagement at sea for Coast Guards and enforcement agency. So while waiting for the DOC to be realized, we should do something. We shouldn't wait for something whose existence is contingent to a consensus that will be very, very hard to come. On the second question, whether the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation is still relevant, we should believe that it should still be relevant. The state of affairs in ASEAN will remain contingent to our mindset. The Treaty of Amity and Cooperation trains us to aspire to be friends and to cooperate. It should remain within our mindset. It should remain relevant. That's the third question.
The third question was on consensus and the extent to which it exists on questions like rules-based order, maritime order, and so on. among Southeast Asia?
Well, if you are to survey the accession of countries to the different instruments, international legal instruments, I think there is a good indication that ASEAN countries are for the observance of international law and the international maritime conventions attached to it or contingent to it. But as to the translation of that aspiration to a vote, I think it's a different story. We know how other countries behave in the ASEAN platform. Of course, there are several factors that I'm sure all of us are familiar with. The reason why coming up with an ASEAN consensus in the persecution of an international law-based order is a difficult path to take. It's a reality. However, for us to maintain or for us to achieve an acceptable state of affairs in the ASEAN seas at least, I think we did not move as a total collective of ASEAN countries. Minilaterals can supplant. I think there is hope there, at this time at least.
Thank you. Ambassador Tugio?
Yes, I think, do we need, as ASEANs, do we need to take sides among the referees or power projections for from different sides? I think I made a reference to the TACs because TAC is a lot of dialogue partner for ASEANs also acceded to these, the US, UK, Australia, including China, Japan, all are also acceded to the TACs. Meaning we don't take sides because those actually platform for us to expand collaborations, cooperations with different countries because it is important for us to have a prosperity, first stability, regional stability, because with the regional stability is that it allow us to build our economy, social economic development in ASEAN's member state. In this regard, I think the TAC continue to be relevant. What need to be done, while we make reflections, while we commemorating 50 years of anniversary of the TAC, look at once again the area whereby we still see the room for further implementation, further developments of the IC for the TAC. Now on the settlement dispute, and the second question on the settlement dispute mechanism, I think ASEAN certainly, consensus is one of the base fundamental the principles of the ASEAN. But when we have some issues like border, I think maritime border issue, for instance, we negotiate bilaterally because for Indonesia, for instance, we are surrounded by 10 different neighbors. So we have to approach differently bilaterally, to have negotiations with our neighbor. And it may take time. Sometimes negotiation on maritime boundaries also a test for the endurance. I follow, for instance, the negotiations with Vietnam. It took more than 20 years on the continental south boundary. I was very junior when I joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs when, my job actually bringing the map during the negotiations. Well, the senior, they negotiate what would be the line that would be acceptable for both sides. It took more than 20 years to complete the negotiations, but it paid off because with that, then we now have a certainty in terms of the the right and obligations of both Indonesia and Vietnam. With Malaysia also we have, and lastly, not to forget also with the Philippines. Very interestingly, because Philippines, when we first negotiate with the Philippines also use the treaty box. Treaty box, 18 something. Treaty of Paris, based on the Treaty of Paris. We said to them, you cannot apply treaty box because it is against international law. It is against the UNCLOS. Otherwise, Spain and Portugal, they may claim using a Tordesillas, why not divide the word into their possessions, respectively? And we managed. It also took a long way to complete negotiations on the EEZ in the Sulu South Sulawesi, which we completed, I think, on with the Philippines 2014. After long, so this is effort by the ASEAN member countries, whereby when we have some issues on the border, to avoid, once again, to avoid misunderstandings on the ground, to avoid the miscalculations among the Coast Guard officials, because they also have a duty to enforce the law. So to avoid these kind of situations, we agreed to resolve through bilateral negotiations. Now, I think with that, then certainly issue goes to bilaterals. And if there are some area whereby we need to discuss with different countries, for instance, there are three junctions element, then certainly we have to include also other countries. Now, the third questions on the China's aggression on the South China Sea. I think the themes of today's conference is very important. The transparency at sea is very important. And I think we should not also forget that the ASEAN mechanisms also through dialogue, the ADMM plus the ASEAN Maritime Forum extended, whereby this provide avenue for us to once again to look at the issues that we are facing. And I think nowadays we have to utilize the technology, because nowadays the eye system, for instance, we can use the eye systems also to make some detections, for instance, to look at how other countries behave in terms of their management of the sea. Because I think this is one of the challenges for us in terms of interpretations of freedoms of navigations. Many countries, some countries may have different interpretations on the freedom of navigation. Many countries also, or some countries have different interpretations also in the implementation of the UNCLOS. And I think one of the key elements when we look at the South China Sea, for instance, we should not forget that according to the UNCLOS, this is semi-enclosed sea. Semi-enclosed sea. And based on the Article 122 and 123, there is obligation for the countries surrounding by the semi-enclosed seas to have cooperations, not only for the managements, but also for the conservations.
Thank you. And Deputy Director General Hamza?
On the COC, we are very positive on that. If I'm not mistaken, there's a third or fourth reading of the draft. And of course, whatever good thing, sometimes it will take time. But meantime, we have to avoid collision at ground, especially in the South China Sea. So this is where I think one of the forums is the Maritime Law Enforcement Agency Forum between ASEAN and China. Of course, what is most important is to build trust first. Once you have a trust, it's not one-day trust. It can take 1 or 2 years, and then we can have a confident buildings, and perhaps we can have the incident at sea agreement. How everybody understand why they're maneuvering in that area to avoid misunderstanding. On TAC, of course, is still relevant. And of course, in terms of dispute, I also like to echo our colleague from Indonesia. When we had the continental shelf agreement with Indonesia, from my reading through our old documents, it only took 2 weeks. But now, because of there are many interpretations of the UNCLOS, perhaps our think tank on the maritime law, we can sit together. What are the interpretation on EEZ? Of course, in ASEAN, there are archipelagic states, there are non-archipelagic states. To me, and Malaysia, I would like to consider Malaysia as a semi-archipelagic state because we are surrounded by seas, except land border with Thailand. But that's the interpretation. So to resolve this dispute, of course, there are many ways under the UNCLOS, and what is most important is negotiation and cooperation. If you want to go to third party, there's a no win-win situation. So I think the rest, I hope during the maritime security issues, we not only discuss on the disputed area, but also from Malaysia experience, there are also encroachment in non-disputed area. Near our shore, fishermen, IIU, so this is another area we should discuss together. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and please join me in thanking our wonderful panel.